Now, in South Wales this morning, a piano is being lowered 300 feet underground ahead of a very special performance in honour of those who've lost their lives in mining accidents.
Yes, and Hal Griffiths is at Blaenavon for us right now this morning. An extraordinary place to hold this, isn't it? Morning.
Yes, indeed, an extraordinary place, rather chilly place just at the moment, but later on this morning that piano will arrive and be lowered, as you say, 300 feet from the top of the mine to the very bottom. Now, Big Pit closed as a working mine back in 1980, but it's now a working museum where people can come and learn a little bit about the realities of working underground and also experience a little bit of the camaraderie shared by the miners. That's very much the idea of this concert as well. It will also try to remember those who lost their lives. It's a journey thousands of workers used to take every day. Lowered in a cage to start their shift at pit bottom.
I think we said about possibly over there for the piano.
Daniel and Laura Curtis have chosen this as the place they'll perform their concert in memory of fallen miners. From the victims of the Blaenavon disaster last year, right back to Daniel's great-grandfather, who was killed at the St Henedd colliery nearly a century ago.
I am dreaming of the mountains of my home, of the mountains.
We've chosen some songs which hopefully the miners who worked here would have had a great affinity with and love. So I think it's going to be very poignant and very emotional, actually.
Definitely. Just listening to the sound and hearing those echoes and thinking of the people who've worked in this very mine, just amazing.
Anyone who worked in a mine like this was all too familiar with the risks of working underground. Day in, day out, it was part of the job and something they had to learn to accept.
Among the trapped are 2 fathers and 2 sons.
The Six Bells colliery disaster in 1960 killed 45 men.
One, the youngest, being 19 years of age.
Jim Watkins was an electrician there. A last-minute change saw him being sent to a different part of the mine just hours before the explosion.
There was 45 killed on the explosion, and I knew everyone. On the monument which is near us now, all their names are on there, and I can point to every name and tell you a little bit about that person, because of course I knew them, everyone.
This weekend will mark the first anniversary of the Blaenavon disaster, a time to remember the 4 men who lost their lives and the mining communities which, time after time, have had to overcome tragedy. Well, we saw them rehearsing there. Let's have another quick word with Daniel and Laura. First of all, Daniel, where on earth did this idea come from? A concert 300 feet underground.
Well, I've got family members who you kind of saw from the VT there who kind of worked underground and unfortunately died working in mines. And I had this idea to kind of do a concert underground, which I kind of said to Laura kind of was a little bit crazy. And I didn't actually know if Big Pit would allow us to do it. But I contacted them and they've just been amazing. To actually be able to do this concert underground today is just incredible.
And Laura, he's got you going down there playing piano underground with the miner's helmet on. Why on earth did you agree to it?
Oh, he's had me all kinds of places across fields, at mountains, and I go where he puts the piano, so I'm used to it. And I did quite well, actually, down the mine in my heels, I have to say. No falling over or anything. Touch wood.
And you were great in rehearsal, and it did have a very special feeling down there.
Incredible. I've never been anywhere and sung and felt so emotional. To actually be in that environment, to kind of hear the sound and the kind of different, it's so poignant down there, to reflect on kind of, what's gone before.
Daniel and Laura, all the best for later on. We're waiting for the piano to arrive here at Big Pit. We'll hopefully see you later on in the programme.
Will do, Hal. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I'm joined now by Daniel and Laura, who saw rehearse there, as well as Wayne Thomas from the National Union of Miners. And Wayne, first of all, it's almost a year since the Blaenavon disaster. I remember speaking to you at the time. There's a lot to remember, not only those who perished there, but the spirit of the community that came together to try and comfort the families.
Absolutely, it was a horrific event, as we all know. But the strength of the community, the support that the families had, has been absolutely overwhelming in South Wales since the last 12 months.
A huge amount of money was raised, and that will help them. But also, I think, did it help heal some of the wounds that those families encountered?
I certainly think the grieving process in this particular instance will take many, many years, but the thought of the youngsters being looked after with donations, with £1,091,000 between these youngsters, will certainly give them a little bit more breathing space for the next generation.
Well, Gleision, sadly only one of the things will be commemorated today. But Daniel and Laura, you're the ones going down there. Daniel, this was basically your idea. Where did it come from?
I wanted to do something to kind of celebrate the lives of miners and obviously pay tribute and our respects to those who've lost their lives. I've got personal family going back generations who've kind of worked in mines and sadly lost their lives in mines. So I said to Laura, I've got this idea, and she said it was crazy. I spoke to Big Pit, and they said it was one of the craziest ideas, but not the most craziest, so I was pleased about that. And luckily they said we could do it, and we've worked together to come up with this concert today.
Laura, you're the one who'll be playing the piano down there underground. Are you nervous how this will work out?
I'm just really looking forward to it, to be honest. It's been quite a long time coming now. Just hopefully the piano will fit in the cage. That's the main thing, and I'm sure it will. Once it's done, they'll have a quick rehearsal and then we'll be good to go, which is great.
Fantastic. And after this, what happens to you two? More concerts?
More concerts, yeah. We're doing some more. Back to the Great American Songbook and Ivor Novello. Back to more conventional concert halls. Back to the National Theatre and places like this. But this is an amazing event.
I'm sure Laura in her heels would be grateful to hear that, at least. Daniel, Laura and Wayne Thomas, thank you very much for joining us, and that concert takes place later this morning.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The concert's been held underground to remember the men who lost their lives working down the mines, many in the most dangerous of conditions.
But the concert was performed in an unusual setting below ground at the Big Pit Mining Museum in Blaenavon. The organiser's grandfather died in Wales' worst mining disaster almost a century ago at the Senghenydd colliery, where 439 miners were killed. David Wood has our report.
An echo of music, a rare sound along the tunnels of Big Pit, and a very important performance for singer Dan.
My two great-grandparents both worked in coal mines. One sadly died in Senghenydd colliery, and the other died of pneumoconiosis, the kind of coal dust on the lungs. And for us, we wanted to do something completely fitting.
After the performances, a minute's silence for the thousands who've lost their lives working underground, but also appreciating the importance of mining to Wales.
It changed Wales more than anything else in human history. It built our communities, it made us who we are today, and it affected every part of Wales.
It's unlikely a piano has been this far underground before. The lift, more used to carrying miners, just big enough for the piano.
You can hear the whole sound echoing through the mine when you finish a note, which is really very special. I know I had a tear in my eye because it really was so emotional, and I think a few of the audience did as well.
We know that even with the hardship that mining caused,
the small tunnel, a unique place to hear music, with only room for around 30 people, including the First Minister, himself with miners in his family.
When we saw what happened in Gleision last year, it was as if the past had come to revisit us. We didn't expect things like that to happen in this day and age, but it reminds us we do have hundreds of miners still working in Wales, that it's still a difficult and dangerous job despite the advances that have been made in safety.
While mining may no longer be the lifeblood of Wales it once was, the spirit of the miners lives on.
Oh, for any length of time, I can hold it in my mind. I never again will go down underground. How's that?
Saturday marks the first anniversary of the tragedy at the Gleision colliery in the Swansea Valley, which killed 4 miners. This morning, a concert was held at Big Pit in Torfaen to remember them and the thousands of others who lost their lives in mining accidents. Our arts correspondent Hugh Thomas reports.
300 feet underground by the light of miners' lamps, a very different type of musical performance. At 7:30 this morning, a piano was lowered down the pit, and once everything was in place, songs from 2 local musicians for a small, invited audience.
I will always return
This Saturday marks the first anniversary of the Gleision tragedy. 4 men were killed in the Swansea Valley when the small mine they were working in flooded. Over centuries, the coal industry in Wales has cost thousands of lives, and it was their contribution that was celebrated today in poetry and song.
It was an opportunity not just to remember those who've been killed underground and those who've suffered hardship through the mining industry, but also to remember the culture that mining communities inspire, the way of life and the mark that mining communities continue to make on Welsh life.
The concert was an idea pitched by 2 singers, Dan and Laura Curtis. The theme of remembrance, a poignant one for Dan, whose great-grandfather died in the Senghenydd disaster in 1913.
The mine has a completely atmosphere of its own. As I said, I whether or not we'll ever do anything like it again, but I will always remember this experience. Just an amazing way to pay tribute to those people, as I said, who lost their lives, but also those who just worked and lived their lives in coal mines and gave so much to Wales and to the UK as well.
Former miners were among the audience, a chance to celebrate the lives of their colleagues.
I think anything that helps us to remember and to celebrate, and I think that's the important thing about today. Yes, we can reflect and think about the losses, but I think it's very important that we remember what the mining industry did for Britain and for Wales.
The event may have been the first of its kind for Big Pit, but it was a fitting setting to remember miners who lost their lives for Welsh coal.
And tomorrow night, a year after the loss of those 4 miners at Gleision, we'll take a look at just what type of coal industry still remains in Wales.
Well, let me tell you about the concert as well. We went along there, and it was Dan and Laura Curtis, and we were talking to them yesterday, famous for a famous American songbook. That is their forte, but they actually wanted to do this because Bryn Terfel had dragged a piano, or somebody had dragged a piano up to the top of Snowdon for him, and they wanted to go underground, and it was achieved. And well done the company who provided the piano, because it was the same company. They went up Snowdon and down Big Pit. The committee at Big Pit weren't sure, really, when they got the request, but it turned out magnificently well. And it was only half an hour of performance with Laura on the piano and also joining in with Dan singing as well. And the songs were tremendous. Also, of course, we had Boyd Clack there, who sang one of his songs, and also a poem that he'd written, and also a poem by Boyd's partner, Kirsten Jones. And it was a lovely poem, that. So they contributed to it as well. And there was a fantastic medley at the end of it all. Guide Me, O My Great Jehovah was the first one, slipping into Do It Hard, Max Boyce's number. You know, the Pit's a supermarket now, that's the one. It's a very poignant song indeed, and ending up with Working Man I Am. And Rita O'Neill, wasn't it, the original song from Canada, but very effective in this part of the world. So our congratulations to them all. Very effective. Carwyn Jones, the leader, of course, of the Welsh Assembly, was there too. First Minister, I should say, of the Assembly was there as well. And well done to all the guides who were there and entered into the spirit of it. And it was quite emotional. They felt it as well. They admitted that.